All right, and now I'm gonna share screens. Wait, hold on. Share screens. All right. Okay. All right, so we're gonna get started now. All right, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining our event. My name is Alex Ramirez, and I'm joined here today by my colleagues, Dennis Chen, Hannah Abbott, and Alex Lee. And we're here to provide you with the Consulting Careers Night event. So the purpose of this event is that we know that COVID-19 has caused a lot of career information and events to decrease substantially. So what we want to provide is we want to provide students with a virtual platform where they can benefit from gaining insights into what consulting career paths look like. So we'll be joined by our 3 consultant speakers today. These are Suquant Rathore, who's a technology consultant at Allocadia, Anne Nguyen, who's a business analyst at Deloitte, and Ginny Shang, who's a consulting analyst at Accenture. So just to go over the event agenda, for the first 5 minutes, we'll be going over some information slides. For the next 45 minutes, we'll have a discussion with the speakers. The next 20 minutes, we'll have a Q&A where you can ask any questions. And for the last 10 minutes, we'll host a Kahoot game where the winners can earn Amazon gift cards. So to start off with the information slides, the first question we have is, what is consulting? So consulting is the business of providing expert advice to a specific group of people to help them move from their current state to the desired state. So say, for example, there's an organization that is earning $6 million in annual revenue. That would be their current state. And their desired state would be to earn $12 million in terms of annual revenue, and they wish to achieve this by the next year. So the organization may not know what strategy to pursue, so they decide to hire an external strategy consultant. So the strategy consultant would be tasked with the job of providing a deep, thorough recommendation on what the organization's strategy should be to achieve this. So one additional thing to note is that consultants typically have to travel all across cities, all across the country, and sometimes abroad. Now, how can we classify consulting? Now, consulting can be broken up into 3 different types. These are independent consulting, corporate consulting, and management consulting. So with independent consulting, these are consultants that are self-employed, and they typically target small businesses and non-for-profits. They typically don't compete with management consultants, as they don't really have the capabilities or the resources or the human capital to compete with management consultants. As we know, management consultants, their target audience are typically very large organizations. So the next type would be corporate consultants. So corporate consultants are corporations that have in-house consulting divisions. And these in-house consultants, they provide recommendations to divisions inside the organization on how to become more effective. And lastly, the last type is management consulting. So management consulting is what most people think about when they think about consulting. So management consulting firms' business model is to provide a wide array of consulting services to their clients and charge them a fee for it. So what are some well-known management consulting firms? As you can see here, these 8 firms that I've listed here are easily the most well-known consulting firms. The top 3, McKinsey, Boston Consulting Group, and Bain & Company, are considered to be the big 3 consulting firms. And the reason for this is that in terms of strategy consulting, they're the 3 biggest earners in annual revenue. And they're also considered to be the most prestigious consulting firms to work for. You can also see in the bottom the big 4 accounting firms, these being Deloitte, PwC, EY, and KPMG. And they're also considered to be management consulting firms because they also have their consulting divisions. So now I'll pass it off to my colleague, Dennis Chen, to begin the discussion with our consultant speakers.
All right, sounds good, Alex. Thank you for that. So just to get us started for the moment we've all been waiting for, the panel session. So I guess just to get things rolling, I would appreciate it if the speakers would be able to give us a brief introduction about themselves, such as what you guys do, as well as some of your previous experiences.
Yep, I can go ahead and start. Thanks, Dennis. Hi, everyone. My name is Jenny. I currently work at Accenture as a consulting analyst, and I've been here since November 2019. I'm a BD grad, and like yourselves, I was once considering going into consulting, and now that I'm here, I feel like it's been a really fantastic learning experience for me. I currently work with a financial services client, and most of the work that I've done has been in the area of change management, but you gain a lot of different types of experience. And so for me, I'm looking to move closer towards supply chain work in the future.
Sounds good. Thank you, Jenny.
I guess I can go next. Hi, everyone. My name is Anne. I am a business analyst with Deloitte. I've been with Deloitte since January of last year, January 2020. The work I do is mostly in tech consulting. We do large scale technology transformations. For me, mostly I work with insurance companies. So currently I'm working with a local insurance company in BC. Prior to consulting, I worked at a fintech startup firm doing equity research and just made the move to consulting last year.
Thank you, Anne.
Hi everyone, I'm Sukwant. I'm a consultant at Allocadia, where I work with clients' marketing and finance teams to configure and adopt marketing performance management software that our firm also develops. Previously, I was the chief of staff at Terabera, where I worked with the CEO and executive team on operational strategy and improving management and decision-making practices. Prior to that, I spent a bit under 4 years working in management consulting at Accenture, where I worked on transformational technology and strategy projects at several global corporations in a bunch of different industries. I'm also a BD grad. I did concentrations in MIS and finance and BTN certificate.
All right, thank you guys for those introductions. So since a lot of the audience members here are looking to get into consulting and are just wanting to get a feel for it, why did you guys specifically want to enter the consulting industry? Guess we can start off with.
I can go first on that one. So for myself, my interest in consulting first was kind of captured with the strategy course everyone takes kind of in their 3rd or 4th year. And in my last couple of years, the focus on the upper level MIS courses really got me learning more about IT strategy and drew my interest towards that kind of work. And eventually I participated in some case competitions and stuff as well. So all of those were kind of factors that drew my interest that way. And then in terms of my previous work experiences in co-ops, I got bored at a lot of previous jobs and work I did because they would stop feeling new, or they would become systematic or really structured. And to me, the big appeal of pursuing consulting type of roles was the variety and newness of every problem or every client you work with. My mindset is kind of, once you solve the problem or you fix the problem, it gets boring because nothing's broken anymore. But the joy of consulting is you just get a new problem to work on.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Just before we move on to the next speaker, just to add on to what you said earlier, do you know which MIS courses you were referring to when you said that some of the MIS courses did, I guess, get you interested in consulting?
It's been a while, so I don't remember the numbers. There's one about IT strategy. Yeah, there was another one about process analysis.
Okay, okay. Yeah, that sounds good. Just so that we can let some of the audience members know who might be looking to enter or go pursue the MIS concentration.
That really resonates with me. The whole thing you said about, being bored at work. I think pretty much with every consultant I've talked to, everyone shares the kind of same thinking. Everyone has that kind of thing where they get bored really easily, and I think that's what draws a lot of people into consulting. A lot of the times, especially if you're on a lot of different projects and there's a lot of variety, every project is like a new job essentially, and so you'll be pretty much starting at a new job every few months. And with that, comes the networking, comes the meeting the new people, comes the traveling. So yeah, for me, that was one thing that really drew me into consulting as a career choice. I know, again, like I did a lot of the case competition stuff back in school, but my reasons for that were pretty selfish. Admittedly, I just wanted to travel on the school dime, but I ended up learning a lot, and I enjoyed a lot of the aspects of the work. So I think that's what drew me into consulting.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I'd echo what Anne and Suquan have already said. Very much the type of person to get bored easily. I did a lot of different things and in my undergraduate degree, and I don't think I was nearly as pointed with what I wanted to study. So I actually don't come from a tech background. I studied marketing and international business, but I knew I wanted to be in something that allowed me to learn a lot and learn quickly. And I think that consulting had the intensity that I was looking for. And it keeps me on my toes all the time because like from day one, I was thrown into the water, to the deep end, being told like, just go figure it out, which is really scary. But I think once you get used to it, it's really quite exhilarating, and it makes the overall journey of being a consultant so rewarding when you're able to work with like-minded individuals who also want to try new things and solve problems. And it just, I think not the lifestyle, but I think just the work and the types of people that you meet really spoke to me. So for me, very similar.
That's awesome. I'm glad to hear that you all have at least a similar reason going into consulting. And you guys are in like wonderful consulting companies. So just leading off of that and going into, I guess, more of your successes in the workplace. So what do you think are some of the most important skills that you've developed that have helped you succeed in your current roles? Guess we could start off with Anne.
I'll go first. Okay, sure. I'd say people skills. I think it's a very underrated thing that people don't really talk about. Consulting, there's a lot of project work, and I know it's a huge joke in undergrad that everyone hates team projects and all that, and everyone's complaining all the time about team members and group members and stuff. But that's pretty much consulting in a nutshell. You're working with a team. Things are going to be challenging. Sometimes you're going to run into issues, maybe not with your teammates, maybe with the clients, but how you deal with that and how you work around that and how you talk to people and how you navigate those little situations, that's huge in consulting. So I'd say that's probably number one for me.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for that. Guess we'll go to Ginny next.
Yeah, I think that's a great one. People skills is definitely important. And for me, I would say, like, I'm trying to think of the right way to put it, but like the confidence and the ability to be client facing, even when you have no idea what you're doing. There's going to be a lot of times when you are presented with a question or a problem and you do not have the answer. Consulting is not about having the answer. Consulting is about being able to find the answer. And so as a person who often gets thrown into scenarios where I don't know something, just tell the client you don't know, but do it in such a way that's confidence inspiring and say how you'll find the answer. And so I think, to sum that up, client friendliness is really important, and not one of the things that students generally think about, because it's all about building the relationship with the person that you're delivering the work to. And if they're ultimately paying for your time, then you want them to feel like they can trust you and that you are a trusted advisor for them. So definitely client friendliness.
For sure. Thank you for that answer. Guess we'll have Suquan.
A couple things I'll add is just being really adaptable and flexible. A lot of different things are going to come your way. You have to be willing to kind of go with the flow a lot of the time. Sometimes you're kind of assigned something that you don't know how to do. You've got to have the willingness and desire to learn how to do that thing and go after that and chase down the problem or find someone who can solve the problem. And then another thing is just being results driven. You have to care about the outcome in order to make an impact.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Thank you for that answer there. So, since you guys are in, I would say, quite different aspects of consulting, I am curious about how your current role is preparing you guys for what you guys want to do in the future, such as possible exit opportunities or maybe some future business ventures. So, since Sue Quant here has quite a bit of experience in consulting, I was wondering if you could start first.
I like to think that I'm always doing what I want to do and my future is right now. So I'll pass this question to the others.
Okay.
I can go first. This has been something I've thought about for a while now. Like for me, I picture myself actually pivoting towards more international development work in the long term. And I think that a lot of what I'm doing now is not necessarily the subject matter that I will be working on in 10, 20 years, but I think that all the skills I'm developing are the correct ones. So like the ability to, think critically, the ability to work quickly, adaptably, be flexible, client friendliness, and just the knowledge of how businesses and large organizations work, I think is really important, because whether you're working with like a nonprofit or you're working with a huge, like a government agency, a lot of the same concepts apply. So this answer, I don't know if will apply to anybody else, but like I'm trying to build my skills in a way that I think can be applied later down the line. But of course, that's just a hypothesis at this point. I don't know if it'll still be true in like 20 years.
For sure, definitely the skills you are learning in consulting, or at least in the industry, would definitely be helpful in the future.
Yeah, I kind of echo those sentiments too. Like right now I'm in the insurance industry. I probably don't see myself working within the insurance industry as an exit opportunity 10, 20 years from now. But yeah, just the skills, the ability to think on your feet, the ability to problem solve, and everything. I can't even articulate how much I'm able to learn over the past year alone. I know a lot of people say like 1 year in consulting is like in, I don't know how many years, 2, 4 years, maybe in industry. So, you learn things at a faster pace here, and you could probably apply a lot of these soft skills, all these technical skills in ways that you can't even think of at this point. But it's just a great learning opportunity, and you can just take all these skills onto whatever role you want to pursue in the future.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely, I can definitely see that and how that would help you later on. So now on to some of, I guess, something that people don't normally talk about, which is, I guess, possibly some of the bad parts of consulting you guys are exposed to. So what would you guys say are the most, at least one most, and one of the least appealing aspects of your job? Guess we can start with Ginny.
Putting me on the spot here. I think one of the most challenging parts about consulting is that sometimes you're just going to have to bite the bullet and do work that you're not interested in. Consulting is very much still it's basically like at the higher levels, you're doing a lot of sales, right? You're building relationships, you're trying to sell work, and oftentimes you just need people to do the work. And not everyone is going to be interested in the work that's being sold, but you sometimes may not have a choice. And so for me, I did not enjoy my first project, and I'm transparent about that, but you actually learn the most from the projects that you don't enjoy. And that was the case for me, because not only was I a fresh grad, I was also just new to consulting in general. And so I think when you go in with the expectation, like, I'm going to do like cool and sexy work, and every day is going to be like, I'm going to be jet setting. And sometimes like you're going to set yourself up for those expectations that may not end up being true. And so not that I thought that way at the beginning, but certainly I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to love every moment of consulting. That's not been the case. Like there have been some times where it's been really difficult. So that's definitely a component of consulting students might not think about, is like the business and the ability to sell work definitely comes first. And so sometimes you're just going to have to take work you don't like, but the way to overcome that is to think of it as a learning opportunity, and that you will get you'll get something out of it, even if you realize like, wow, I hate this work. I never want to do it again.
Yeah, for sure. Just to build on to what you said earlier, I know you're not allowed to give, like some of like the case information, but what type of work would you say you tend to not enjoy? Because you did say that there were types of cases that you didn't enjoy. So would that be like more like jobs where you have to crunch more numbers, or how which jobs just do you not enjoy as much?
I won't narrow it down to a specific aspect, but I think it's just sometimes like maybe the client is hard to work with, or maybe you're in an industry that just doesn't inspire a lot of joy. You're just like, well, I'm just not interested in working in this very specific and very niche industry. And maybe the work can be repetitive, but there's no hard or fast answer because everyone's interests are different. And for me, I just like sometimes you just like, grin it and bear it, but you learn a lot too. So I don't want to position anything as having like as a regret or anything. I've certainly may not have enjoyed my first project, but I don't regret it by any means.
Awesome, thank you for that. I guess we can move on to Anne next.
Yeah, sure. So one thing that I didn't really expect or I didn't really think of going into this was in consulting, there's a lot of office politics and whatnot that people don't really talk about. So I'll be forthcoming with you, like promotion time, let's say. The way it works is it's a table of senior managers, managers, and partners, and they sit around and they talk about you. So, leading up to this, you have to demonstrate not just to your direct manager, but you have to get your face in front of people and you have to talk to people, pretty much get that exposure so that you can get that support when it comes time for promotion. So in a large firm, there could be a lot of office politics and whatnot, and kind of navigating that, it isn't really one of the best parts of consulting, but it's just part of the nature of working in a huge firm. So yeah, I'd probably have to say that.
Yeah, that's definitely helpful for us. Didn't expect that, to be honest. But
Yeah, you're expected to do like work on top of the work that you're already doing. So like helping with sales proposals and stuff, like all that extra work on top, it makes you look good. So it's like a kind of, I don't want to say dark side, but it's like one side that people don't really talk about.
Yeah, for sure. Guess last we have Suquant over here.
For me, the most appealing part is helping clients solve problems. And like I mentioned before, just being able to move forward to new problems and having a variety of different experiences. There's a lot of other appealing parts working with really strong, high-performing teams, working with like-minded people. For me, working in consulting also was a lot about making a lot of cool friends because people are all the same age, you're all working together, sometimes you're all traveling together. So those are all really appealing aspects that I enjoyed. Less appealing parts, it's not all fun and games depending on your role and the scope and the project you're working on. Sometimes there's grunt work involved in pulling something together, whether it's scrambling to make last minute changes to a deck or reconfiguring some crappy Excel someone made to crunch the numbers you need. Sometimes you got to do a little bit of grunt work to get the results and things you want. It's not all just fancy presentations.
Yeah, for sure. I can definitely see that as well. So on the topic of you mentioning how you guys get to travel and such, and now we are in a pandemic. So how do you guys see consulting companies making progressive changes towards bringing more value into like teleconference, or do you think that once the pandemic is over, you guys are gonna do a complete shift into going back to face-to-face meetings with clients? Guess we can start with Ginny again.
Yeah, that's a great question. So with this last year, we've all adapted to being 100% remote. And so I think actually one of the benefits that have come out of it is that clients who previously did not have the budget to fly in consultants and experts to help support their initiative or their project now have the opportunity to work with people that are not local. And so that expands their capacity to work with many more different people. And so for us, I think actually after COVID wraps up eventually, I think it will allow us more flexibility to work with different clients because some people just prefer their consultants be local so they can just kind of like call them into the office. But we've proven that we can work from a distance and we can work effectively, so with minimal disruption. So I think that we have more positive and more business opportunities actually that come out of this whole pandemic experience.
Okay, that's definitely good. I guess we can move on to Anne here.
That's a positive spin on things. I personally joined consulting because I wanted to travel more. So I didn't get a chance to do that. I don't really see it going back to the way it ever was again. I think, you know, face-to-face meetings and whatnot, they'll probably be for more senior folks, managers, partners, etc. So I think the way we've been delivering work so far has worked fine. And I don't really see it transitioning back to 100% face-to-face interaction or actually going to the work site.
Okay. That must be bad for you since you've really enjoyed the travel aspect of the job at least.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even get a chance to, you know, pick up those travel points or hotel stays. So what a bummer.
Yeah, definitely. All right, now you have Sukwant here.
I traveled enough on everyone's behalf. In my first few years of consulting, I think for at least the first 3 years, if not longer, I literally traveled 4 or 5 days a week, every week, the entire time. Often, you know, leaving on Sunday nights, sometimes Monday mornings, and coming back on Thursday nights, sometimes Friday nights. It was a lot of fun. It does get exhausting, but with COVID and how things have changed, I don't see consulting companies going back to that model entirely. You know, using things like teleconferencing and Zoom and even collaboration tools like Slack and Microsoft Teams, these have all been in use at most major consulting and technology companies for a long time. So coming into the pandemic, most firms were already prepared to work this way because they kind of already worked this way for a portion of their work anyways. You know, there'd be weeks where you'd work remotely, or maybe 1 day a week you'd work remotely. And it was kind of just an easy switch to go from, oh, I'm always in the office or I'm always traveling to the client to, okay, now I'm just always remote. We still have the same tools. Everything's still in place. So moving to a weekly kind of travel schedule, like a lot of firms used to do before, it just seems really unlikely after it's been proven for over a year that it's not necessary.
Okay, that's definitely interesting because personally I thought that it would go back to the way it was just because of the relationship building aspect. But then I guess since you guys have shown success in I guess your current roles and doing your job remotely, you can definitely see it staying this way.
Yeah, I don't think business travel will go away entirely. There will be reasons that you'll have to travel to a client site, whether it's like doing certain workshops together or certain kinds of work that, you know, is easier to collaborate together in person. But I doubt it'll be, you know, always co-locating for the sake of being co-located.
Okay, yeah, for sure. Thank you for that. All right, so I guess on to the next question here. So since a lot of us here aren't really experienced in consulting, at least in the professional industry, what are some of the common misconceptions people might have about the consulting industry that you guys might want to clear up right now? So this could be like, oh, a strong need for learning hard skills, or just anything else. I guess we can start with Ginny since you recently just entered Accenture as a consultant.
Yeah, so a common misconception, I think, okay, so I'll frame it in this way. Like one of the biggest things that I did not know about as a student was how much networking this job requires. If you do not like networking, you will not enjoy consulting, because when you join a firm, especially of like one of our companies at their size, like work does not necessarily fall into your lap, especially if you want work that's, you know, aligned with your interests and is what you see yourself doing in the future. And so what I mean by this is like, if you can picture yourself as like an analyst or a consultant, you'll have people helping you get staffed onto projects, but if you're not staffed on the project, you're on the bench, right? And so if you sort of never took any direction and you are just comfortable going where your path takes you and just taking whatever work's available, then sure, right? That's totally fine. And plenty of people do that. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you had a very specific place you want to get to, like you really want to break into banking or you really want to break into natural resources, you need to take time outside of your own client hours and build a network with people that you do not work with, right? So it means reaching out to people that are, in the practice, that know the work, and making it known that you're interested and you want to do that work. And so when there's more projects coming in for that area that you're interested in, they'll consider like, oh, okay, Jenny expressed interest being on this type of project, maybe we should consider her. And so there is a huge amount of networking that's needed to try and build a brand for yourself inside consulting. And that was totally new to me. So if you guys don't like networking, it's something you guys should consider. Like I don't mind it. And I think over time it's become easier for me. But in the beginning, that was certainly a big shock.
Yeah, just to add on to that about the networking part and securing, I guess, work. When you're securing with your clients, how do you normally approach it? Do you focus more on creating the connection with them first, or how much of a percentage of your connection would you say is like, in a sense, a sales pitch of why you should be their consultant?
So at the MD and like the client account lead level is where they sell work. And so if you're an analyst or a consultant, really you're not going to be on the sales side. Like your sole focus is to deliver the project stuff, right? So that's why they say consultancies are also sales companies, because like at the higher levels, they are the ones doing the pitches, they are the ones doing like talking to the clients and selling all these huge transformations, and then you as an analyst or consultant deliver the work. So I wouldn't personally be in those conversations to make the sale, but what might happen is I might support a proposal that goes into helping prep them for those sessions. And so like at this level in my career, don't get much client facing time when it comes to sales.
Okay, thank you for that. Guess right now we can move to Anne.
Yeah, I'd have to say the same thing. That was probably the number one thing that shocked me when I first got into consulting. So it pretty much kind of works like a temp agency, there's someone there to help you. There's a resource manager there to help you get your jobs, get your projects and whatnot. But a lot of the time you're on your own. And I didn't really figure this out early on enough. I started off in consulting and I was 4 months on the bench, which is awful, which means you're not really doing anything. So, networking is a huge skill to have. And, at this level, at the analyst consultant level, you're not really so much pitching yourself to the client as you are pitching yourself to the people who are staffing for these roles. So, they'll reach out to you, they'll book a call with you, and expressing interest isn't really enough. You have to talk about your skills, talk about what you bring to the table, your past experiences. So the job's not over once you get the job. It's only just begun. Like the whole interviewing, networking process, you literally have to update your resume. You have an internal LinkedIn site. I mean, we do here at Deloitte. And people are searching you up through this LinkedIn site kind of just to find people to staff on their projects. So it's very much you have to keep on looking for the job within the job. So that was probably the number one thing that I didn't even know about coming into consulting.
Yeah, that's definitely really interesting. And just out of my own curiosity, how competitive is it within your own company to secure a job? Because you did mention that you were 4 months on the bench.
Oh yeah. I mean, that was pretty much for me, it wasn't really competitive per se. It was just for me, I was hired into the insurance practice, and my project got delayed. It kept on getting delayed and delayed. So, I wouldn't say it's competitive really. It's just you have to do your own searching and you have to find these projects on your own and reach out to other managers, because there's always going to be projects. It's just a matter of like whether or not you're taking the initiative to find them. And I wasn't doing that. So
Yeah, for sure. All right, I guess last but not least, we have Sue Kwant here.
Yeah, I think the questions about misconceptions people have, and I think because a lot of the people attending this session are kind of really new to the idea of consulting and what they think consulting might be. So I think one big conception that a lot of folks usually have when they first learn about consulting is that, you think you're always going to be making like some grand strategy presentation to C-level executives. But this isn't always the case when you go into a consulting firm and you start off as an analyst or consultant and you get on your first couple of projects. More often when you enter consulting, you'll be working with clients at various levels of the organization to solve specific issues. The issue or project you're working on might not even be directly related to, like what the company does at the top level. It might be related to like one specific vertical in the company. Like maybe you're helping them install a new finance system and switch over from their old system. Like it can literally be anything. It can be at various levels of scope, and it really depends on the type of consulting work you do, your firm, the scope of your project. It's just something to keep in mind. All consulting roles and all work is not like top level strategy consulting.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. Thank you for that. Thank you guys for sharing your at least insights and experiences as well as knowledge about your current roles. So now I just wanted to shift more into, I guess, bringing value to students that want to enter consulting and maybe how they can look towards that. So I guess my first question would be, what makes a student stand out when they're applying for consulting positions? Guess we can start off with Ginny again.
Sure. So I'll keep mine short. I think the most important thing, or at least like one of the big things that we look for, is students that are keen and they're curious. And so they exhibit a natural desire to learn and want to grow and continue to develop themselves, because consulting is a very fast-paced and constantly changing industry. So if you kind of show that you're not really interested in learning much and you're not interested in trying to do things differently, that can sometimes be a bit of just not like a good trait to have in consulting, because oftentimes you'll find things change a lot faster at a pace than you might be comfortable with. And that's something we really need new grads and consultants and analysts to be able to adopt and own.
I see. How would students look towards, I guess, displaying that want of learning more and such? Would that be through certificates or just through extracurricular activities?
Yeah, so definitely those ones that you listed. And I mean, just be very explicit, right? Like talk about things that you're reading, talk about things that you've been looking into, maybe trends that you're interested in. It's like the opportunity to speak to someone about like a specific topic and just show that you've done a bit of your research and that you continue to do so. And it's not just something you're doing because like you really want the job. And it just, the curiosity needs to be genuine, and you shouldn't try to fake it, because if you got the job by faking an interest in learning, you will be sorely disappointed when you enter the job and you're like, everything's changed so much.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Thank you for that. I guess we can move on to Anne now.
Yeah, so I helped with resume screening this year. I can sort of speak to it from this end.
Awesome.
Yeah. So generally speaking, students who show initiative, who show leadership, so your involvement in extracurriculars, whether or not you have a job while you're in school is huge. So it's not enough just to have stellar grades. I mean, grades are great and everything, but you got to be a multifaceted candidate if you want to enter consulting. And another thing is, it's a client-facing role. So whether you can articulate yourself well, work under pressure. I know the interview is pretty tough. So if you can demonstrate that during the process, then you'll be aces.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And just curious, what type of I guess jobs would you say students could get outside, outside that would be able to help them gain more experience into entering consulting roles?
Sure. So, anything customer facing really would help. Anything office related would help. Again, client facing is huge. So, even if you hold a job as a server, we're not going to look down on that or anything. It just means that, okay, you've had experience talking to people, and yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for that. Now we have Suquant.
So I'll talk a little bit about the cover letter and maybe your behavioral answers. My advice would be, don't be generic. you should have a really good, impactful and personal story about why you want to pursue a career in consulting and with this firm specifically, wherever you're applying. So that's really important to make yourself stand out. Yeah, don't be generic.
Like just to add on to that, what would you say is a generic candidate?
Basically, I would say you want to provide really good personal reasoning behind why you've chosen to pursue a career in consulting, whether it's, I don't know, some life event that made you realize you want to go into consulting, whether it's, something you learned, or telling a story about how you uncovered this desire to pursue consulting. Maybe talking about your personality and how you really deeply believe it fits, but you want to make it personal. You don't want it to be just, you don't want your cover letter or your interview answers to be something someone else could copy and paste or recite out and also have applicable to them. You want it to be something that only you could be able to use in your application.
Okay, yeah, definitely. That's definitely helpful for a lot of the students here. And just onto, I would say, a question that not isn't really asked often. And since a lot of the students here might be looking into going into consulting, do you guys have an idea of, I guess, what type of people would you say are not suited for consulting? Guess we can start off with Ginny here.
So I don't want to close the box for anyone in terms of like, consulting is definitely not for you, because actually consulting is one of the most diverse places you'll have. Like my start class was just it's like 15 engineers. And so you have lots of people that study a variety of things. I've seen people that studied neuroscience. I've seen people that studied like fashion management, like visual arts. Like you're going to have a whole handful of people. And so no hard and fast rule for who's not going to be good in consulting. But I say traits wise, similar to what I said before, if you're not comfortable with changing a lot, if you're not comfortable with things being dynamic, if the idea of like having to turn around something within the next 2 hours for some very high profile client scares you, then I might say that that would be probably a sign that consulting is either not your calling in the for not your life calling, or at least you want to take a less client facing role. And for a lot of us, like being client facing is a fundamental part of the job. So if you prefer to be on the back end and helping support the preparation of these materials, what you might be better suited for is something like doing like a data analytics analyst, right? We have loads of people that work in the background and help us prepare the solution, but they are not client facing themselves. So I think you can get involved in consulting in a lot of different ways, but certainly if it makes you uncomfortable to be in front of a client and present and often talk sort of like on the fly, it might be harder for you to get into it.
Okay, definitely. Thank you for that. Guess we can move on with Anne.
Yeah, and to kind of echo that again, even if you're not comfortable client facing, I know that, at least within tech consulting, there's a lot of roles that are more on the technical side. So, you can be a developer, you need like UX, UI designers in consulting. There's a lot of aspects of consulting for a lot of different people. A lot of consultants are introverted and, they do fine. So again, the door's not really closed for anyone, but like if you really like stability and if you really enjoy just 9 to 5 clock out, then consulting's probably not for you. I'd say like the opposite of consulting would probably be a government role, kind of cushy, kind of stable. We kind of make fun of it a lot. So yeah, I'd probably say that's it.
Okay, sounds good. Now last, we have Suquant here.
So I would add that to succeed in consulting, you need to be comfortable with working without directions, without a map. You need to be able to chart your own course, and you have to work with a lot of ambiguity. A lot of times the requirements are unclear, the expectations are unclear. You don't know what to do, and you have to figure out both what everyone wants and how you're going to do it. And yeah, it's just you need to be a self-starter. You'll have a lot of autonomy in how you complete your work. And if you can't take the initiative to get things done, you're not going to do well. So my answer was a little bit backwards, so you can spin it around to answer. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Um, all right. So by popular demand and a lot of other panels or at least speaker events have, how important is the student to have a high GPA? So how much of a concentration do you guys put on like a high academic GPA? Would you say that a student should focus on getting it as high as possible, or should they spend more time focusing on excelling in excelling on their extracurriculars or getting certificates and out of school experiences? We can start with Ginny here.
So I definitely think that this high GPA answer will, like, it might scare some people. The answer is depends. So it depends on where you're going. The way to think about GPA is not just like, okay, you're really good at school, but GPA is one of the easiest indicators for companies that get a lot of applicants. We're talking like 500 plus applicants for these entry-level jobs, to start to filter it out, right? So if you're getting this many people, it's sometimes the easiest way for companies to just say, okay, nobody below 3.7 or whatever, arbitrary number, not a hard and fast rule. And it will depend where you go, because certain companies that are, they value prestige and they make the recruiting process very difficult, they might say that GPA is essential. And so they might not accept anybody with like below a certain threshold. But I can be upfront about it. Like, my GPA wasn't crazy high. I'd say it was like, I think it's above the department average, but like, I don't think that it was essential to why they decided to hire me. So I say, do your research for where you want to go. And if you don't have a stellar GPA, then make up for that through all of the things you do outside of school. Do the case comps, do JDC West, do like co-ops and all that good stuff, because it's not about showcasing how good you are at school. It's about showcasing how you're able to manage like multiple deadlines, different classes, the contents that you're learning. It's going to be important to some firms, but it's not important to every firm.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for that. I guess we can move on to Anne now.
Yeah, very true. Different firms have different GPA cutoffs, but really the main takeaway from your GPA is that, you can manage your time well. If you're doing a bunch of stuff and you can still maintain high grades, then it's a great indicator that you can do your job well and you can balance things well. So, it's definitely not a deal breaker, but it doesn't hurt to maintain a really good GPA, I would say.
Okay, for sure. And
I have a similar point of view on this. I would consider it a minimum bar to meet. Once you meet that bar, it's kind of an even playing field with the rest of the applicants who meet that bar. But obviously having a trash GPA isn't okay either. The minimum does vary from firm to firm, like the other said. I'm not going to throw out a number. The best way you can find out what that minimum is to go talk to the recruiters at the firms you're interested in. It's not a secret. They'll just tell you if you ask them. It changes from semester to semester. So yeah.
Yeah, from your experience, what numbers have you guys seen as like a minimum?
It really varies. Depends on what firm you're looking at. It can be anywhere from like 3.5 to like 4.0.
Oh wow. Okay.
I want to say
sure.
like a B plus was something last time around.
My
Yeah.
numbers might be off. It's been a while.
I don't know.
For the record, like, I've seen people that do not have great GPAs, and I mean like just not great, okay, but they make up for it by having awesome experiences. So we will probably stray away from giving a hard and fast number, because usually it's not the only determinant for when someone will be successful as a consultant. And for the record, like, if you guys wanted to enter consulting not directly from school, like you got a couple years of industry experience and you came in as an experienced hire, then GPA isn't really a factor at all, right? Then they are looking at your work experience, what you've achieved, and how you apply that. So like, it's important if you're trying to get in directly through university, but like, don't break your backs over it,
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. All right, I guess since it is 5:19 right now, we could move on to the Q&A session for the audience. So if you guys want, you guys could raise up your hands and then we could answer any questions that you guys might have based on what was discussed earlier today. All right. If not, we could also move on to the. Oh, okay. So we do have one hand up from Gabriella.
So you guys did cover a lot of my questions throughout your Q&A, so I don't really have too many, but one thing specifically I was going to ask is if you had anything in particular that you wish that you knew before you entered your career.
Yeah, for sure. Could we start off with Ginny, I guess?
I need to think about this one. I'm gonna
Okay.
call on somebody else.
For sure. Either Anne or Sukwon. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, tech, project management, all very big in consulting. I didn't really know that. I came from a finance background, so like I didn't understand lingo at all. I remember talking to a manager and he was telling me that I'd be staffed doing BA and QA work, and I had no clue what they stood for. And I didn't even know what agile was. So yeah, but that in mind, I did still make it into the firm, and I do know those terms now. So you could definitely figure it out once you get here. But in terms of coursework, like you learn it in school, and you can avoid the struggles that I did.
Thank you for that.
I wish I knew nobody wore ties. I bought a whole bunch before I started work, and I never wore any of them. But in seriousness, I wish I had done a lot more networking when I was in university. To be honest, I barely did any networking. I hated the networking events. I never came to talks like this. I was more interested in, studying and getting good grades in my courses, and I didn't really pay attention to a lot of the extracurricular stuff until the later part, the last couple years of my degree. When I went like all out and I did like co-ops and case comps and everything. But I wish I started that earlier on. So good on you guys for joining stuff like this, and definitely take the opportunities when you have them to chat with people who work at places that you might be interested in and get a head start on things like that. And you never know who might end up being your interviewer somewhere someday in the future. Surprisingly, in some of the chats I had in my last couple of years, I later ended up meeting a couple of those people that I had just kind of casually had coffee chats with in the interview process at certain firms. So that's a huge bonus for you if you do things like that.
Yeah,
For sure.
messaging people on LinkedIn, it's totally fine. Now that I'm on the other side of things, I thought that I would be bothering people, but no, I'm all for it.
That's good to hear. Awesome. Guess if Ginny has anything to add to that?
You know what? I think Sukwant took my answer. That's exactly what I would have said.
Yeah, for sure. About the tie thing, right? I guess I just wanted to add on to Anne's answer about knowing about IT. So this is one question that we couldn't get to just because of time, but how important are the technical skills when someone wants to go into IT consulting? So like, do we need the hard skills such as like knowing exactly how everything works and learning how to operate all the technology, or do we just have to have a general idea so that we can help people consult about it?
I can speak to it because I came in knowing literally nothing about IT. So a huge part of consulting is learning as you go. And so long as you're smart and you're driven, you can pretty much pick things up as you go. You do get thrown into the deep end. So it's not like a huge prerequisite that you know anything about technology. If you're bright enough and you're smart enough, there's going to be people willing to teach you and train you.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much. I do see another hand here from Lawrence. You can feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question.
Yeah, hi. So my question was, when you're tackling like a new job for a client, what kind of mindset do you like start off with?
So I guess we can start off with Sukwant first, since you probably have more experience.
I might need some clarification, but I start by reading the statement of work. Usually there's a couple pages, or I don't, depending on the firm you work at, a couple hundred pages, defining everything that your team is going to accomplish by the end of the project. And it kind of lists out what you've sold and what the client's expecting and over what timeline. And I go through that so I understand what it is that I need to deliver. That's the first thing I kind of do that in a project. And usually the second thing is meeting the folks on the client team that I'll be working with, probably doing some sort of informational interview with them to see where they're at. And that's how I kind of get my bearings.
Awesome. Thank you for that answer. Guess we can move on to Anne.
So I've only really been with one client so far. That's the thing with big tech transformation projects. They're usually long term. But I came in, thinking it's gonna be great. I know this company firsthand. So yeah, you just do your research on the company. Again, statement of work is huge. And you can definitely talk to the managers, the people who actually worked on the proposals, get a feel for what the project's gonna be like.
For sure, for sure. Next, we have Jenny here.
Yeah, very similar. I think especially if I'm in an industry that I don't know, I spend a bit of time researching the industry I'm about to go into. Like very rarely you end up being in a place where you are the expert, actually, because there's just so much that can happen. And so what I did on my current client is I had some informational interviews on my own with people that were on the project before me. So that helped get me a better understanding of what was expected of me as an analyst here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, next, I do see unless Lawrence wanted to add anything.
Follow-up question regarding that. So like, I feel like when I do cases, they normally have like what they want, but also maybe like a preferred method. But from what I perceive about accounting, it's like about finding creative problems. Creative solutions to solve your problems, right? So how do you like not get stuck on one method of like tackling the problem?
I guess we can go with Suquant. He looks like he's thinking really hard about the answer.
I'm thinking about the question. So unless you're doing like big picture strategy consulting, your work isn't going to be like coming up with a big solution, like a typical case competition problem. So the problems and things that you're encountering will be more, in my experience, the kind of problems I've encountered are like structural problems within the organization, roadblocks with certain clients, people not wanting to sign off on something, having to build a relationship between two different functions of the business that don't necessarily get along. Those are the type of problems I've dealt with.
Guess we can move on with Jenny here.
Not too much to add. I just put in the comments that like case competitions and consulting are actually very different. Like case competitions, you can think of as kind of like an artificial setting where you have like a time box where you have to work within this certain problem. It's like very intense, very demanding. And usually consulting is a lot more like, it's not like you're doing everything in one day or you're not doing anything in 48 hours. And so it's a much more like you have time to iterate with the client and talk about your approach. So if you're worried about being boxed into like one way of thinking, usually you will have team members that can sanity check you, or you can talk to the client and say, this is what I think. How do you feel about it? And the client will tell you like, I love it, or let's revisit. I don't want to speak on behalf of the organizing committee here, but I am actually seeing that we have another hand up, and there was one more question in the chat about why we pick the consulting firm we currently work at. I don't know, you guys can tell us like schedule-wise how we should do this.
Could you repeat what you said earlier?
There's another question in the chat from Andrew who said, what made you decide to work for the consulting firm you're currently at? And I saw that Mike, I can't see your full name, I'm sorry. Somebody else has their hand up.
I see. I guess we'll have Anne answer this question, and then we'll go to Michael, and then we'll address Andrew's question right after.
Okay.
Yeah.
I actually really don't have much to add. I think,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I guess we'll go with Michael's question since you've had your hand up for a while.
Okay, hello. So my question is, with consulting, often there are very niche skill sets, and a person either develops like a very general skill set or a extremely niche skill set. And there's always bound to be problems. For example, a person would or a company would confront you with a problem that you have no idea about. So my question is, what kind of course of action do you take, or would you take, if a company were to confront you with a problem that you knew little or nothing about? And feel free to include examples.
Yeah, for sure. Since I remember Ginny talking about saying that you don't know with confidence, I guess we'll start off with Ginny here.
You're going to get that a lot. Like sometimes clients are just going to ask you these like huge questions and you're just not going to have the answer. And I think that's very normal. And if you always had the answer, almost like as a client, I'd be like, really? Like, how did you get there? I think that's okay. What's important is that if you know the answer, certainly tell them what the answer is and how you got there. And that's why, like, if you guys are prepping for case interviews, it's so important to use like frameworks, right? It's so important to use your logic to explain like how you got to that answer, or at least like draw on sources that you've seen. But for me, like when I'm at work and I'm faced with a question that I just like have no idea how to answer, usually my answer is, that's a great question. I'm not sure, but I can talk to XYZ and I'll get back to you. And then you get back to them. Like I said before, consultants are not expected to have all the answers. You are just expected to know how to find them. So as long as you follow the logic-based thinking and use your frameworks, structure your thoughts, I think you guys would be just fine.
Awesome. Thank you for that answer. Guess we'll move on to Sukwant.
Yeah, I was just going to add, like most of the time you don't know the answer and you don't know what to do. And there's usually somebody else working on your team who's dealt with that problem before. If there's not, there's probably somebody else at your firm or some past client example that you can access to figure out what they did. It depends what firm you're working with in terms of like how much information and stuff like that you might have available. But if you're working at one of these big global consulting firms, you have access to a lot of previous projects and decks and examples of all types of different work that's been done before. So when you explain, why are we doing this to a client, or how did you get to this answer? It's because your firm has done this at XYZ clients before, and this is how it worked out, and we think it was great, and this is why we're going to do it again.
Thank you for that. Now we have Anne, if you have anything to add on to that.
Yeah, search out subject matter experts, SMEs. There's going to be a SME for every subject. You can just find them and find the answer there.
Awesome. All right. Before we move on to Jake's question, I just want to address Andrew's question that he had. So for, I see Anne has already answered it, but what made you guys decide to work for the consulting firm you currently work at? So for Anne, she just said that Deloitte was the only one that gave her a second interview. Is there anything you want to add on to that? Or
well, yeah, and I guess Deloitte was my target firm, really. They make the most money in consulting in all of Canada. So I took that as, they do a lot of these interesting projects within a lot of industries. So the opportunity is huge. They do a lot of consulting. So I think that's what drew me to them.
Awesome. And now we'll go on with Ginny.
Yeah, I'm going to give you the cheesy answer that everyone will give you, and that is like the culture. There is a story behind it though, and I'm happy to share that story. Before like COVID, we were all doing like firm visits, and I'd actually gone to the Accenture offices a couple of times to do like workshops for JDCUS and stuff like that. And Sukwant actually was the person who facilitated those workshops. So him and I are like, no, I'm kidding. And so when I was there, I always felt like I got the opportunity to talk to consultants and analysts that were very close to me in experience level and in age and in background. So I could picture myself working there, right? Like I could look at Sukwant and say, wow, like the work that he does is so interesting. I could totally see myself doing that in 2 to 3 years' time. And by like force of nature, I got an interview with Accenture and was offered a position with them. And so I very happily took that because, you know, the great people that you talk to, which is also why networking is so important, helps you understand like, what do people, how do people work there? You know, what is the work-life balance like? What is the company culture like? How do people interact between themselves? And I just resonated the most with Accenture. And so it happened to work out for me, and I feel very fortunate for that.
Awesome. All right, now last we have Suquant here.
When I first went into consulting out of campus recruitment, it was like during the recruit season when everybody's interviewing at all the firms. And you know, this was before COVID time. So back then, the firms would have like 3 or 4 rounds of interviews over a month. And there would be a lot of opportunities to connect with people in the offices. Some of them would have networking events where you could talk to a lot of the consultants and managers who work there. One or two of the firms that I interviewed at as part of the interview process, they had like happy hours and networkings and things like that, where they would invite all the candidates and all the interviewers just to have drinks together and talk and things like that. So there was tons of opportunities to just chat with people and get a lot of insight into what type of people work there and you know, what kind of culture they have. And that's why I ended up making the choice that I did back then. Right now, the reason I'm at Allocadia is because I wanted to gain, I did a lot of work in strategy and management consulting side. So my shift now is to do a little bit more technical consulting work and gain some breadth on the kind of other side and more technical elements of projects.
Awesome. Now, so I guess right now we can move on to Jake. I see you have your hand up. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, first of all, thanks for hosting this great event and for the 3 of you coming out and giving us some good tips and whatnot. So my question is just, so right now I'm looking into a couple more internships and co-ops. And I just wanted to know, like, do you guys think getting more experience through internships and co-ops is beneficial before really going into the applications and the interviewing side of it? Because I haven't like, I've decided into consulting but late in my degree, so I don't really have the same experience that a lot of people do going into like their final year. So yeah, the question I guess would be, is more internships and co-op experience better?
I can start. That is a great question. I think you'll find that consulting internships are actually far and few between. They're very competitive. Like, I will not lie to you guys, like everyone in business school has at some point thought about consulting, and it's just very competitive space to actually get a consulting internship. Most of the people that I work with, at least like kind of in this fresh grad realm, do not have an internship with consulting, including myself. So I had a couple of co-ops, but I had never worked for a consulting firm before. I'd never, you know, like sat in front of a client and presented anything. But what's important is that you have work experience, at least like corporate experience of some kind, because they need to know that they can trust you in front of a client, and that you're able to at least understand a bit of like the office dynamics and how you're supposed to operate, and have similar skills. So if we need someone, well, we'll definitely need someone that has like critical thinking skills. You can build that in a number of ways. Like so prior to joining Accenture, I did an SAP co-op, right? And I worked in business development, literally nothing to do with consulting. And it was kind of like adjacent to tech, not really. And it was just much more different than what I'm doing now. But what it helped me get was like a wealth of experience about how SAP software works. Helped me become very proficient in working with some data, helped me become better at like data reporting, data visualization, like all of these skills you can get from jobs that are not branded with like the name consulting on it. And you just have to package it up in a way that the recruiters can see, like, clearly this person has all the right skills to do consulting. They just haven't worked in consulting before, and that's fine.
Thank you for that. I guess we can move on to Anne here.
No, I think Ginny answered that perfectly, so I don't really have anything to add.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. How about Suquant, if you have anything to add here?
I would just add that getting a consulting internship is the easiest way to get a full-time consulting job, making the transition from student to full-time, but everybody doesn't get a consulting internship. I never even thought about getting a consulting internship because I wasn't even interested in consulting until after I had done all my co-ops. But it is important to have some sort of work experience. I definitely recommend the SFU Business Co-op program, or whatever it's been renamed to. You should consider co-ops that involve similar skill sets as being a consultant. So any kind of co-op that involves like project management work, strategy work, business or process analysis work, software development work, any sort of roles that have the same applicable and transferable skills as consulting jobs. And you can look up the descriptions and compare them, and you can kind of see that, oh, these co-op jobs really match up with the same skills I'm going to need for consulting. And those are huge bonuses when you're applying versus people who have no experience. I think it's very rare that someone who has just their degree completed and no other work or volunteer experience, it's unlikely that they get an entry-level job in consulting.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you for that. Seeing it is 5:40, we will take one last question here from Jaipal. I'm not sure if I pronounced your name correctly. Sorry if I didn't. But yeah.
No worries. Yeah, it's Jay Paul. First of all, I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your busy schedule to meet with us. I was looking into consulting, and SFU has a program called MCCP. I just had an interview for it. It's to essentially prepare you for like a full-time career in consulting, and it involves a lot of case interviews. It's only 2 months long. It's like a career prep program. And they asked me some questions which involved a lot of critical thinking. And I noticed, even though I didn't know the answer for all of them, she was more interested in the logic and how I approached it. But just prior to that, and even in my, like, I'm currently interning with Scotiabank as an analyst, and my boss used to be a management consultant, so I was asking him about his experience, as well as a couple other people who have been consultants. But at the end of the day, like, if you guys could please, like, in a nutshell, give me like what is a typical day as a consultant? Like, I get the general gist from what I've heard, but if you could describe a typical day, what would that be like, if you don't mind?
Guess we can start off with Ginny again here.
That's a good question. Okay, so I'll give a bit of background on my project. I'm working with a financial services client in Vancouver, and they are going through a very big organizational change, like the biggest that they've gone through in the last 50 years since inception. Okay, and so as a part of this transformation, there is a team that works with their medical stakeholders, and I work on the change management side of it. So I help manage the medical stakeholder relationships. And so what I do is I will help them do their communication strategy. I will help them prepare materials for like different events that we go to. And so on a typical day, I'd say it's a lot of liaising with our SMEs, so like subject matter experts on like, okay, so I've prepared this deliverable, how do you like it, what revisions can we make, and getting to go through the review cycle, and then they'll either give me the sign off, or they'll tell me no, like this needs to go through again. And so a lot of the work we do is very iterative. It's not so much like, okay, I'm going to spend 48 hours preparing this deck and then you just present it. It's actually a good idea to validate the work that you're doing with them throughout the process, and involve them so that you don't have to do a whole ton of rework later. So, I mean, like if you really want to boil it down, it's like a lot of meetings and a lot of presentations, but I think actually there's a lot of workshopping that's involved. And so my day is a lot of workshopping.
Great, thanks.
Awesome. We can move on to Anne here.
On a bad day, it's like 6 hours of meetings. And then you have your work still to do. So you would do your work after hours. But yeah, a lot of these meetings are with the clients. For me, from a tech implementation point of view, I'm running workshops, elaboration workshops with the clients where, we're going through the software, we're going through the screens, and we're asking them like, hey, do you like this? Do you like this? We get those requirements, we get those documented. And then, talking to developers, talking to the designers, again, liaisoning. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of meetings involved. So Yeah, no day is ever really the same, but I'd say the bulk of it is going to be meetings.
Okay,
And
thank you.
just to add on to that, if you could add on to that, Anne, Rachel did ask you to do a lot of OTs in your day to day.
I'd say, you go through slow periods where you'll work normal hours, and then you'll go through periods where it's going to be crazy hours. So it's not really a consistent thing. Some days, some weeks you might work 60, some weeks you might work the regular 40. So it's not going to be as bad as investment banking though. So we win here.
Thank you for that. Now we have Sukwant here. Can you just give us your insights on your day to day?
Yeah, I'm missing the question. Was the question about hours of work?
Day to day, like
Day
what
to
your
day.
day looks
Oh,
like.
yes. Sorry. My answer to this is the typical consulting answer is it really depends. You'll hear it depends from consultants a lot. If you work in consulting, you'll say it a lot. But yeah, you might have a day full of meetings. You might have a day where you have no meetings at all. You might have a day where you've decided to, focus on the work you want to get done and hammer it all out. You might be on a project where you're managing a lot of different clients and stakeholders, and you have to talk to them all the time, all individually, and that might, take up a lot of chunks of your days just on calls or in meetings together. So it really depends on what type of client you're working with, how many stakeholders are involved, how big the scope of the project is, what responsibilities you have. So I've been on some projects where there's just a handful of clients and your team is small. So, you meet with the client like once a day or once every 2 or 3 days, and the rest of the time it's just you working with your team, collaborating together. I've also worked on projects where there's like 50 or 60 people involved on the client side and probably the same amount from the consulting side. And you end up spending a lot more time in meetings because the scope of the project is more complex. There's more areas you need to be aware of. So there's more meetings you have to attend just to get information. There's more meetings you might need to have to process that information and put things together. You might eventually be managing other members of your team, so you have to meet and connect with them to give them their tasks or review the work that they've done. Yeah, depending on your role, you might have folks offshore in India or somewhere else where you've got to have a call with them every day or two to kind of check in on what they're doing and give them their updates. So it really depends. You're not necessarily in meetings all day. You're not necessarily never in meetings either. Everybody's experience will really vary.
Great, thanks guys.
All right, thank you guys for your answers and questions as well from the audience. So just so we can ensure that we finish by 6, we will be moving on to the Kahoot now. We do encourage everybody to join just because there are prizes for the first, second, and third place winners. So you guys would be able to receive some Amazon gift cards here. So I will just give me 1 second here to host. All right, give me 1 second. Alrighty, so I will be sharing screen right now, and then you guys can feel free to join our Kahoot quiz. Just want to give a quick shout out. These questions were written by our speakers here, so we just want to thank them for their time with helping us create these questions. All right. Let's see if we have anyone. All right. We will start it when it hits 5:50, I guess. So we have more time for people to join. Okay. Just a few more seconds and then we'll start at 5:50 here. Alrighty, I guess we will get started now. So let's get going. First question. So which option is not a consulting job? Okay, I'm glad most of you got it. Might have been a little bit worrying if you guys didn't. All right, perfect. So now we'll move on to the next question here. We'll see. Oh, Lavenda, congratulations. All right, on to question number 2. Which of the following skills is necessary to succeed in any type of consulting? Okay, perfect. Glad you guys are listening. So it is communication here. Alrighty. Here we go. Next question. Oh, Lavenda still in first place. All right, impressive. All right, now on a true or false, the only way to enter into consulting is during an undergrad or postgrad recruitment session. All right, awesome. Glad you guys got that information ready. So now we do have all right, JC Judy taking first place from Lavenda. Perfect. Let's go on to the next question here. Your resume should be a maximum of 1 page. So this one's just up to personal judgment here. Oh, I see this is half and half. Sukwant, do you want to speak on this question since you did write about it? About maybe some of the misconceptions people have about the resumes?
Yeah, so in the consulting industry, the resume standard is 1 page. And typically, the rule of thumb is 10 years of experience is 1 page of a resume. And nobody applying to a consulting job should have a resume longer than 1 page. So yeah, one page for your resume, 1 page for your cover letter.
Awesome, thank you for that. Yeah, I do know a lot of people do think that you can extend up to 2 pages, but it's good to know that the rule of thumb is just 1 page here. So next question here. Ooh, Maher on to first place. Nice, good job. All right, next true or false question. Attaching a cover letter is optional for entry-level consulting positions. Yeah, so that is false. If I do understand correctly, Sukwant, it would just mean that it's definitely a good idea to show the company why you want to work for them, and especially expand on your resume to expand on what makes you a qualified applicant. On here,
Yeah,
so on
and
to
this is especially important when you're going into entry-level consulting. Once you're more experienced and you kind of have all of the skills to back yourself up, you'd be more comfortable in just throwing out a resume with no cover letter. But when you're going straight out of school into a consulting firm, almost everybody is writing a cover letter, and if you don't, that's just a negative on your application.
Thank you for that. All right, let's take a look. Maher still in the first place. Okay, it's really impressive. On to the next question here. Once you start to specialize in a specific consulting niche, you will do that type of work for the rest of your career. Okay, so it is false here, so that should be good to go. Thank you for that comment, Suquant. All right, Maher's still in first place. Jake's catching up though. Hopefully he'll be able to steal that first place from you. So now question 7, what element is not part of a typical recruitment process? Awesome. Yeah, I do understand with the person that picked the happy hour one, because when Suquant mentioned this to me, I was a little surprised that we would have happy hours with some of our clients or interviews, so which is pretty interesting to me. Yeah, I can definitely agree with Ginny about the burpees there. Okay, Jake getting first place now. So now on to our last question. What's the first thing you do when you start a new project? Awesome. I guess listen to Suquant's answer then in the Q&A. That's good to know. So let's see who's on the podium here. So third place, we have Maher. Oof, so close. Then Gabriella. First place, we have Jake. Awesome. All right, so just so you guys know, the first place winner will get a $25 Amazon gift card, and the 2 runner-ups would get a $15 gift card as well. So that would be good. If you guys could if the winners could share their emails onto the chat, that would be great, so that we could send that to you. And also, just to show our appreciation for the speakers, if you guys could react with the clapping hand emoji for a round of applause, because they did an excellent job with the questions. And we will also be sending each of you a $15 Amazon gift card as well, to show our appreciation and just being here and taking time out of your busy days to join us. And yeah, awesome. I guess we do also have a survey that we would really appreciate you guys to fill out. Andrew Ramirez did send it in the chat. It would take a 1 minute or so, but then we would really appreciate if you guys could fill that out. Again, thank you guys for coming to our event. And I hope you guys learned a lot with our speakers, because I definitely did. And yeah, thank you guys again for coming to our event, and thank you to the speakers for coming. You guys have a good night.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Have a great long weekend.
Thank you, guys.
Awesome.
Let's manage soft team. Let's just stick around for a bit just to discuss.
Yeah, for sure. Do we have other emails?
Good performance out there, Alex.
Thank you.
Yeah.
G Bowers at sfu.ca.
Huh?
Oh, I'm just writing down their emails for the winners.
Oh, I took a picture.
Oh, you
of
took a
emails,
picture?
But yeah.
Awesome. It's Gabriella, Jake, and Maher.
Wait, but like it's Jake, Gabriella, and T Metwall, right?
No, that's not Maher.
No, Maher didn't
No?
send his.
Yeah, Maher didn't. I have his I'll just
Yeah,
use his
get his
SFU
email.
email. Well, I'll just use his I'll just send him a message, but I'll use his SFU email.
Right.
All right.
Wait. So thank you guys for attending. Aisley and John, you are free to leave now.
Just kick them out.
Yeah, I'm just gonna.
Because I don't think they're here.
Oh,
Alright,
good.
awesome.
Okay.
Perfect. I think that went well.
That went-
The questions, the
that went
Q&A went a lot longer than I thought. I'm gonna be honest. I was fully prepared to have nobody ask a question and move on to the Kahoot.
Yo, I was gonna
Right.
ask a question myself.
Huh?
I guess I'm gonna end the recording.
Oh wow, that wasn't